Bear down, Chicago. It's the Bears Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything Chicago Bears, every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Windy City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. From Soldier Field to the next great chapter, the Bears Squad Show starts now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Bears Squad Show here on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel. The Bears shut out the Bills, winning 38-0, but that's not the story of the game. The story of the game is the first possession of the offense for Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Joe George and Lauren Cox here with you after every single Bears game this season. We started last week, no starters. This week, Lauren, we get the starters, at least most of them. Caleb Williams is out there, 90-plus yard drive to start the game. You couldn't script it any better, man.
Yeah, I mean, that was exactly what we were looking for. If anybody had any kind of doubts about, well, all the reports of up and down training camp practices and how well the offense would execute, like this was I don't want to say silence the doubters, but it was at least like a take a deep breath because this is how it's supposed to look. I mean, I know it's Bill's backup, so we can talk about that a little bit, but like some of this stuff is just like, let's just actually see it all come together. And like, that's a big, I don't even want to say relief necessarily, but it's just like, it's a big, like, all right, like there it is. That's, I even use the word proof of concept is kind of the way I'm structuring it at this point. Like we've seen how it's supposed to work and how it looks when it's firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I mean, it's as the drive is happening, I'm just like, okay, like they're cooking. We're seeing, some hints of what the offense can look like. We're seeing the connection with Loveland and Kmet and big plays and good blocking without Joe Thuney out there. I mean, it's all positive, that first drive, the way they move the ball down the field, overcoming a holding penalty, and just the starting field position, obviously, was not great from Scott on that kick return. Bad decision there. Which we'll get to later in the show. We'll get to the bad stuff later. Most of it's injury related, to be honest with you, after a shutout in a preseason game. I think my favorite play though was honestly the throw to Kmet. Like immediately he's open. Caleb finds him. Perfect throw, spiral down the middle of the field, and Cole Kmet goes for 20+ yards. That to me was, and there was a lot more good from Zacchaeus and everything, but that was the one that I was like, all right, I like how that connection looks. Especially last year when it felt like Cole Kmet was not used enough in the offense.
Yeah, it just felt in rhythm and in a structure that felt like it was missing so much last season. Like, because that was the thing, that was the second play of the game. The first play, all right, rollout pass, check down to Coleston Loveland, just get a completion. Let's move the ball forward. Let's just kind of like shake that out a little bit. Now, then it's like, now let's do some structure. Like, let's see what this offense is really supposed to look like. And it was, 5-step drop, hitch, seam ball, perfect accuracy, well read, like footwork was crisp, delivery was smooth, dropped it in right over top of the coverage. Like it was just like everything. It was mechanics, it was the read, it was the design, it was the accuracy. Like that was like there it is. Like, oh, that we found it there. We've solved the thing, that we got it. We've captured the Ben Johnson offense, and now we're really seeing it come together.
Yeah, it's funny too. You think about what's happened so far in training camp, the overreactions to the video of Caleb Williams not hitting any of the targets. To I'm almost imagining right now first takes leading off with Caleb Williams tomorrow morning and how good he looked in a preseason game. It's just my guess is what they're going to be saying. But you mentioned the rollout play. That's something now, 2 preseason games in a row with Tyson, Caleb, and then Tyson again later in the game. That does seem to be a part of Ben Johnson's offense that is, I really like what we're seeing, specifically from Loveland on it there, to get the 8 yards, to be able to create some separation. Just another way that if your running game's not going, and with all these injuries that the running back room is facing, the little things that they were able to create on that first play, I really like seeing that in the offense.
Yeah, it's proper under center footwork. It's also a quarterback who, does have to turn his eyes away from the defense to execute the play fake. And then, he's looking away and then looks at the defense late and has to read it quickly from there. Like it's all the little things that I think take advantage of what they want the system and the structure to do. And then also take advantage of Caleb Williams' skill set as an athletic mobile quarterback who you can use on the run a little bit more and not just, I mean, obviously you want him to be able to succeed from the pocket as well, but don't just try and make him a pocket passer. You can do all of the above and take advantage of that playmaking ability all over the field.
We'll be here after every single game. We'll react to your guys' comments here in the chat as well. Justin Baker says here, look good. I'm good with him not playing against the Chiefs if Ben doesn't want them to. Totally agree, Justin. This is all I needed from the preseason game. Also, as the injuries started piling up throughout the game, and again, we'll get to those, I was like, yeah, they don't need to play next week. I'm good to go with what the Bears did this preseason.
Yeah, and Ben hasn't said it outright, but he basically hinted at it last week when he said that the starters would play against the Bills. He was like, well, it's a different schedule with the games this week because they're playing the Chiefs on a Friday after the game. Like, that was him saying, like, we're going to play in this preseason game because we know they're not going to play in the following preseason game. Like, reading between the lines, I think that was pretty clearly the plan at that point. So I think this was all we needed to see. And I almost like too that it wasn't perfection, right? He missed a pass to the running back. There was a low throw to Zaccheaus, but he was under pressure. There was a holding penalty. I like that it wasn't like, oh, everything is perfect against Bill's backup, so there's nothing to work on. Oh, everything is perfect and dandy in Chicago. It's like, no, it was like everything we wanted to see, but also, hey, there's still a lot of room for growth, and you know that things can get even better than a 38-0 preseason blowout.
Yeah, I also respect to Ben Johnson for kneeling it out there. I thought it sounded like Ryan Poles in the booth wanted him to go for 40 a little bit. And then obviously the Zaccheaus touchdown. I mean, the reports out of training camp from him all year long have been, especially in the inter squad practices, have been that run after catch. And you see it there where nice ball over the middle to him. And then Zaccheaus just does all the work and takes it to the end zone. As much as the good we'll talk about with Luther Burden, maybe some great with Luther Burden in this game, honestly, I think that third wide receiver spot going into the season is Zaccheaus's. And as long as he's healthy, and we'll see a lot of them, all four of these guys, but he has been a lot of fun. And maybe the surprise for me, Lauren, of all the offseason moves that I just didn't expect any of what we've seen in that moment or in practice so far.
Yeah, I think he's pretty clearly entrenched as the number 3 receiver. That play in particular, though, or I guess that after the catch there is like, that's the one area I'll point to and say, well, it was Buffalo Bills backups. Like, the starters, that play's probably not a touchdown. I think that safety's taking a better angle and the cornerback's actually going to be able to bring him down. Like, I think the route running and even like Caleb's footwork and delivery and stuff, those were things that were largely independent of whether that was starters in a regular season game or backups in a preseason game. But the difference between that being an 8-yard slant and a 36-yard touchdown was, oh, those are backups. But I thought that play was like a really good example of Ben Johnson's offense, where, Zaccheaus is like the inside slot guy, releases to the outside and kind of crosses with the receiver, then slants back to the inside, and sort of the structure of the routes helping create that separation as well. It's like, there's Ben Johnson scheming up what otherwise is just a simple slant read for the quarterback, but it's a lot different for the defense to figure out, okay, this guy's going outside. Oh no, he's going inside and trying to keep up. Like, that's where it's like complicated for the defense, easy for the offense. And then backups make it easy for Zaccheaus to really look like a stud after the catch.
I think that's one of my bigger takeaways from the game is what you're saying right there is with Ben Johnson and the wide receivers just overall. It didn't matter if it was, your main 3 guys or, Burden and Scott or whoever, the tight ends, from start to finish, backups, second stringers, third stringers, guys are just open. And that's where you can think about the being the most excited part of this game, I think, is, okay, Ben Johnson, schematically, it does look like a genius in a preseason game. Yes, but there's just guys open all over the field, and it didn't matter which version of the Bears was out there from the snap to the end of the game.
And the timing was there for it every time. Like that was one of the big marrying things. Because I think even last year in the Bears offense, there were times when you'd watch the tape, right, and there would be a guy open, but just not at the time that Caleb Williams is looking there. And then by the time Caleb gets to him, the guy's not open. Like, things were just disjointed in that way. But it's like here, it's like the footwork is tied to the route depth, is tied to the timing of when the ball can come out and get to the player. Like, even just the 3-step drop curl route to DJ Moore on the far side of the field, like, it was the perfect timing. Like, the ball is out as DJ Moore is turning back towards the quarterback. It's not this like, got to wait to see him open before I let go of the ball. There's anticipation there built into the timing of the system that just feels it. This should be basic offensive stuff that we shouldn't be that impressed with. But after last
we're
season,
Bears fans.
Yeah. I mean, a well-executed 6-yard curl route. It's like, finally, that's what it's supposed to look like. Or a slant route that ends up going for a 36-yard touchdown. It's like, finally. Yeah. You can complete slants. Great. Now we've reached Mike McCarthy level of offense. Let's go.
The other one, you mentioned the DJ Moore one there. So 3rd and 5, they convert to DJ, and then the drive stalls out the second drive of the game. But from a Caleb perspective, he executed it perfectly. Like, I guess you can make the argument the throw's a little low, but Roma Dunze knows he should make that catch, and he gets his hands on it. But you would have converted the first down there. So even though, like you said, Lauren, that it wasn't the perfect 2 drives for the offense, there are things to work on, and that's one where it's just Roma has to make that catch. And that's really, to me, like the only real negative besides the holding. It was a great throw and right in the right spots where only Rome could get it. So even though it's an incompletion, it's one of my favorite throws that we saw from Caleb in this game.
And one of the other things that I think is going to get overlooked in all of the great things we saw, but we've heard Ben Johnson talk so much, especially in training camp, about, tempo and cadence at the line of scrimmage being a weapon for them. And they got the neutral zone infraction. I mean, Coleston Loveland almost false started, but the defensive lineman jumped first and it was a free 5 yards. And like that 5 yards is not the difference between winning and losing a game necessarily, but it's one of those little things that just helps that drive go a little bit farther. I mean, that was right before Roma Dunze's drop on third down. So it didn't result in points in that moment, but it makes that down and distance that much more manageable when, I think that sequence was like that screen pass that got blown up. So he had to throw it in the dirt. And then the neutral zone infraction gives him 5 yards to make up for what otherwise was an incomplete pass. And I think it would have been a third and longer. Now it becomes third and a little more manageable. And then Dunze doesn't have to be as deep, just can't hold on the ball. But like those little things, I think, are the kind of stuff that it's the hidden yardage that really hurt the Bears a lot in the past and now can kind of help them get those extra 5 or 10 wherever they might need it.
Yeah, the other one thing that I was, looking at this game and to what we've seen, what we've heard from training camp about issues the Bears have been having, and that now with Caleb Williams out there, we can see, okay, how was this executed? There's been a lot of delay of game penalties at training camp. So I often found myself as there's, 6 seconds left on the clock and it's ticking down like, okay, what's going to happen here? Is there going to be a delay of game? Is there going to be, a false start of some kind? And so at least through 2 possessions, like they kept all that clean. And again, doesn't mean it's going to be obviously clean all the time, but at least for today, when you've heard that's been the biggest, sounds like negative about the Bears offense in camp. It was very positive to see Caleb work through the system in the offense and not have those glaring weaknesses that seem like they have been to this point in camp.
Yeah, I mean, even just like getting the players lined up with the line of scrimmage in the right positions. There wasn't like Caleb having to move guys. I mean, they're pre-snap motion that's built in, but not like, hey, I got to correct where you got to line up differently there. And it seemed like they were getting lined up to line of scrimmage with plenty of time in the play clock. The majority of the time, there's a good 10 plus seconds by the time everybody's lined up, so he can see some things pre-snap. And you mentioned like none of the pre-snap penalties or anything like that, like no illegal formations. Like it was just, it's not stuff that should be hard, but it's just nice to sort of like see it executed smoothly. You kind of take for granted those things when it's done right all the time, but we're used to it not being done right. So it's nice to like really appreciate just not screwing it up.
All right, in the comments, if you guys want to start dropping in the best parts of the game for you, any part, not just with the starters, the backups, who impressed with you the most in this one. So we'll get to that in the next segment. Before we do, though, Lauren, does feel like we got maybe an answer a little bit with the tackle. Everything that's going on with left tackle. Braxton Jones is in there. Ozzy's at right tackle with the second group. That's changed quickly. It does feel like the offensive line they haven't verbally said it, but it feels set that we know who the Bears starting offensive line will be week 1 versus the Vikings.
Yeah, for sure. I think as much as they keep this as an open competition, and they have moved Braxton Jones around a little bit, like it says a lot that Jones has been the starter for both of the 2 preseason games. Like he has been the front guy. As much as Theo Benedict gets first team reps at practice and Trapilla bounces around and Amagashi's still in there, like it feels pretty much to me like they don't want Braxton to just, coast and say, oh, it's your job, you're good. Like they clearly want him to still be better. But at the same time, I think they've also clearly identified him as their best option when they're perhaps lacking a truly great option at this point.
All right, we'll take our break here. When we get back, we'll start rolling through just all the good stuff that happened. There's a lot to get to. And again, you're welcome to jump in here on the chat live here on YouTube, or you can hit us up off the air as well if you're listening on the audio version of the show as well on Apple or Spotify. That's coming up next here on the Bears Squad Show on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel. Today's show is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. I play in a league with a couple friends from work, and we are playing on Yahoo Fantasy this year, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. It's that time now. The starters are pretty much done with the preseason across the league. So if you want to start drafting in fantasy, I approve that now at this point. So to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. All right, what's the best thing you saw in this game?
I mean,
outside of the starters, I guess.
I would say outside of the starters, because for me, the starters were definitely the way to go there. But for me, it was some continuation of some of the things we've been wanting to see more of. I mean, I think Luther Burden's blocks to me was maybe the most, I don't want to say surprising, but I mean, it's not like you were sitting there like shocked, but like, it's like, oh no, he is bought in. Like that was not something he did much of at Missouri at all. Like, I think sometimes the whole, like, he took plays off narrative can be unfair. And sometimes you don't actually know, if you don't know what the player is being asked to do on a play, sometimes it can look like he's taking the play. I mean, I think we on the outside can too often jump to conclusions about what we think a player is or isn't doing on a play when the ball doesn't come their way. But like, physical blocker was definitely not something you would describe Luther Burden as. And even Ryan Paulson on the broadcast said, like, yeah, at the beginning of training camp, that was not the way it looked then. Like, it's very clearly like buying in not only to like the coaching, the literal on-field coaching of like doing what the coach says, but also just like a cultural thing of like, hey, we are going to hold you to high expectations. And when we set a standard for something, we actually mean it. And it's not just like an ideal that we aspire to, but like a reality that everyone has to exist in. And so to have Luther Burden respond in that way, and particularly like this player respond in that way, that carried probably unfair red flags, if you will, that probably aren't super legitimate, but people love to say, well, is he some kind of potential head case or diva or whatever? Like, I don't think there was a lot of evidence of that, but people jump to that conclusion. So for that player to be the one that is really bought in, like it's obvious that Ozzie Chapillo is going to buy in. Like he's kind of just a ho-hum, simple guy that everyone really likes, but like Luther Burden kind of carries him as, oh, does he think he's better than the team or whatever? Like, clearly no. And that was probably unfair from the start, but if he's bought in, everybody's bought in.
Yeah, I mean, and on the day, 3 catches, 49 yards, averaging 16.3 yards per catch. So he also had the results from pass catcher's perspective, but he's pretty much responsible for 2 rushing touchdowns in this game. And that second one, I mean, Greg Olsen couldn't get enough of it. He loved showing that to Ryan Poles. Greg Olsen's great, by the way. But he pushed that safety, 3 yards back into the end zone. It was very impressive. And to have a wide receiver like that you feel confident with, that can block, can be a weapon catching the ball. It just, again, it's another thing that adds to Ben Johnson, that between Loveland, Kmet, now Burden entering the conversation as a willing blocker, it just adds to what this team can be. Justin says here in the chat, Zacchaeus' touchdown was the best. O-line play with the starters was second. Yeah, Caleb had a lot of time, but he also got the ball out really quick. We didn't really mention that. I mean, that ball was flying out of there. Everything you would have loved to see last year, you did see in that first possession specifically, where it was catch, drop, throw. No questions, no thinking necessary. Yeah,
the initial data from PFF had 2.6 seconds average time to throw from him in this game, which was definitely way sped up. They have Tyson Bagent really fast in this game too. That seems to be a very clear I guess teaching point of Ben Johnson's that's coming through loud and clear. And like when you look at the offensive line and pass protection, they had Braxton Jones with 1 hurry, and that was it. I think I remember the play in particular. He got a little bit of speed off the edge that made Caleb step up. But for the most part, like this was a clean offensive line performance in the passing game for sure. And then the running game, here and there. I mean, you don't have Joe Tooney out there. I think left guard wasn't as strong, and I think there were a couple plays where the right side of the offensive line didn't hold up as well. But like that was a really solid performance up front, and it should be against the Bills. Like, I'm not ready to say that group is all locked in and good to go. Like, against backup Bills linemen, it should be about it that clean from start to finish.
Yeah, Joey Bosa, who I forgot was on the Buffalo Bills until they showed him on TV. Like, what does it look like if he was out there, in this game? Ed Oliver, those kind of guys. It's look, this is one of those games where just I'll get to one of my more specific goods, but it's we all got friends that are obviously diehard Bears fans. We're just, even if you're just on Twitter, it's hard not to feel like overexcited about this game and just, about how the offense looked, how clean and all of the process was in that first drive. It's hard not to get overhyped. It is the preseason, but it just gives you good feelings going into week 1 versus Minnesota that there's something to build on in this offseason. Because even last year in preseason, like, compare and contrast, this never happened in preseason last year. We never saw Caleb go out there and have a level of success like this in a preseason game. So it's all good there.
Yeah, the highlight from Caleb last year in the preseason was that in the Browns game where he had that scramble where he like escaped a sack and then like looped. It took like 15 seconds, but he was like in the pocket for a while and then looped on it and like ran in. And we were all super impressed. But like it just struck me when I was rewatching that play today that like it feels like the last 3 Bears quarterbacks, when we'd see like a big preseason performance, it usually involved the rushing. It was usually the legs. It was like, well, look at the playmaking that this guy's got. Justin Fields running, Trubisky's running. And then last year, Caleb Williams, he could look at what he could do with his legs. You just add in the passing and then we're good to go. But like now we're seeing like, oh, no, this is like from the pocket in rhythm passing. Like this is the real stuff. Like, not to say that the rushing's not impressive and important and valuable, but like the stuff that sustains success is the on time, in rhythm, quick start out of the gate, hot passing. And that was the other thing is like Ben Johnson passed on the first 3 or 4 plays in a row in that whole opening drive. They really only handed the ball off once because one of the handoffs had the holding penalty. So like one rush to like 8 passes on that first drive or whatever it is. They wanted to get the passing game going quickly, early and often. And like that's the stuff that really translates to winning football games if you can do it against not backups in the preseason.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that it would make a lot of sense for, Caleb, who's a big confidence guy. We know that. We saw last year the body language stuff wasn't great. Ben Johnson's talked about that, when he got hired, that the body language wasn't always great from Caleb Williams. And getting him involved early, quick, easy stuff prevents a lot of that. I at one point, Lauren, in this game, I started to imagine myself as a Bears fan without Caleb Williams as my quarterback. And just because I'm so impressed with Tyson Bagent. Like, even though he's not the guy, it's the Bears have something really interesting there as a backup quarterback. And honestly, he's going to hit the free agent market at some point and probably get a crazy contract, like not the top of the market stuff, but he impresses when he's out there, and he did again in this game as well.
Yeah, really sharp and feels like a valuable asset to have back there as such a cheap backup at this point. I know this offseason he'll be a restricted free agent, so the Bears can match any deal he might get. And I'm curious, like, assuming hopefully, he doesn't get any meaningful regular season snaps and starts any games this season, like what that market looks like for somebody like him, because we've seen quarterbacks have great preseasons before, and teams haven't, unless it was like a highly drafted quarterback or something, teams don't go out of their way to give big money or trade picks for a preseason standout. Like usually you got to see him have like the Matt Flynn game in the regular season before you get that big contract. And we've seen Bagent play 4 games, 2 years ago and look fine, but like not enough to like get that big contract. So like, I'll be curious if his preseason crosses that threshold, or that combination of like, well, we've seen him play regular season games pretty well. We've seen him be really something special looking in the preseason. Like, is that enough for teams to really come calling, or does it have to be like a couple more starts of like, oh, this guy in a regular season game looks like a starting caliber NFL quarterback for another team to say, all right, let's actually go all in and invest in this player?
Yeah, it probably does. Like, and hopefully he doesn't get that, because unless it's the Matt Flynn situation in which he's playing the last week of the season, because the Bears have locked up a playoff spot. So you hope Tyson doesn't get a lot of run out there this year, but you're right. It's a great asset to have on this roster between him and then a veteran in Case Keenum, who's hurt and didn't play in this game, who's just going to kind of be behind the scenes and be a mentor. I mean, I think I said this a couple episodes ago. Like, I don't even know how many games he was at last year for the Texans, or if he was just in street clothes and no one could ever find him because he was hurt the entire season. So he's just kind of there he's another coach on this roster, essentially. So you have a legit backup, and he just played very, very well. Booker had another game, obviously gets hurt. He got hurt and then he goes into the tent, comes back off, Adam Hogue said, for another kickoff, and then left the game. again. So hopefully, cross your fingers, I guess, that it's not a serious injury, and there's other ones we'll discuss. But 4 sacks now in preseason games for Austin Booker, continues to shine as well in the preseason.
Yeah, there was 2 half sacks in this game when he got to the quarterback. So it's nice to see like multiple times of getting there. And of course, Andrew Billings as well.
He was on my list too.
Was the beneficiary of one of those. Like it's nice to see just like some of that continued progress for a guy. It clearly in this game, Booker jumped Dominique Robinson on the depth chart. I mean, he and Tano Passanio were the first ones off the bench, and then Robinson was like 5th then in the defensive end rotation there. So I feel it feels like Dominique Robinson played exactly 6 snaps in this game, and he wasn't one of the first guys off the bench here. So I'm curious what that means for his roster spot, whether it's precarious or not, or whether they're going to keep 5 defensive ends there, or how they want to keep, because the defensive tackle spot's going to be similarly interesting because Chris Williams was playing with the starters in this game. So you got Dexter and Williams and Jarrett and Billings, and then Shamar Turner, your second round pick, he's going to make the team. That's 5 right there. And I didn't even throw in Zach Pickens yet. So how they sort out that defensive line is going to be really interesting because they got more guys than they have spots for that you would ideally like to keep.
Yeah, we could see. I mean, I'm curious if we'll see the Bears get in the trade action. We did see one happen today between the Texans and the Eagles. So, like, it is that time where before guys get cut, teams are calling. And look, when we get to the bad, we'll go through it. But obviously, you might need to be calling about DBs. You might need to be calling about running backs with the way this thing's going. But the other positive thing I want to highlight here, you talk about a lot of bodies, Lauren. I don't really know where he fits in exactly on this roster besides being ultra depth. But on the rollout, 35-yard running catch from Scott, he looked good in this game too, and then he had the touchdown. So Taylor Scott is probably the 5th guy on the depth chart at this point for the Bears. So he's obviously going to be on the roster, but he did look very good and showed some of, I think, what we have hoped. And again, it's a preseason game, but overall positive for him outside of the kickoff return.
Yeah, that one's tough because his job is really going to be special teams on this 53-man roster. He was, if I remember, I definitely saw him as a gunner on, I think, the first team punt unit, if not the first team, second team. Like he was down there chasing down punts, so he very clearly has a good special teams role. And for me, there's not another receiver that is like clearly better than him and more primed to take one of those roster spots, because like Luther Burden's not going to play a ton of special teams, and like Zacchaeus isn't going to play a ton of special teams, so they really need that other guy that's not Devin Duvernay, the other backup, to be a key core special teams player, and no one else is really challenging him up for that much. I mean, Maurice Alexander's kind of close, but I just don't think really at this point anyone's going to get in the way. Those 6 seem pretty locked in, and then it's just a question of like, will they want to keep a 7th? But I think as long as those 6 guys are all healthy, it's probably going to be Moore, Adunze, Zacchaeus, Burden, Duvernay, and Scott, and that's probably your crew.
Anything else stand out for you that was ultra positive from this game?
On the positive side, nothing else jumps out at me right away. No.
Yeah, the only I just mentioned, I just kind of wrote down because it happened more throughout the game outside of the first possession, but the use of the tight end also seemed to be a clear theme. Even the running game, like you mentioned, like it was okay. I think for the guys that the Bears were running out there, there's some like, okay, like you can envision how it works with a healthy running back room. Is it going to be healthy? Great question. But you can at least envision kind of what the run game will look like. It's one thing you mentioned earlier. I'm really curious, like how often does Ben Johnson go to the pass, gut feeling, and like the start of the game? I mean, he doesn't feel like he's going to be one of those coaches that goes run on first down every single time.
Ryan Poles seemed pretty adamant during the in-game interview. He was talking about the offensive line. He said like a couple times, like, really think the running game, especially like early in games, that's where we're going to see the most improvement from that group this year. So I like to think that for Ben Johnson, like, I think he's smart enough to, as far as modern football, where like running is a little bit of a luxury in the sense that like you want to run the ball as much as possible, but you have to pass. Like when you need to, you got to go to the passing game, but ideally you run the ball as much as possible and don't have to pass because your team is doing well enough. Like in that way, running can be a little bit more of a luxury that I think they want to be able to just take it easy and hand it off and run the offense that way and then pass when you need to. But otherwise, like, run it as much as they can and get these backs involved, with the big caveat of like, they do need healthy backs with there. And I do wonder if maybe a free agent is still potentially going to come in here just to give him another healthy body there.
All right, we'll take our next break here. Let's go through the bad stuff. It's mostly injury. I have an annoyance on the broadcast that we're going to discuss. Two of them, I guess. We'll get to the whatever negative things you saw in this game. It's hard in a 38-0 preseason win. It's really nitpicking, it feels like. But we'll get to the next here on the Bears Squad Show on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. These days, it feels like there's advice for everything. Cold plunges, gratitude journals, screen detoxes. But how do you know what actually works for you? With so much information online about mental health and wellness, it can be overwhelming to figure out what's true and what will actually help. That's where talking to a licensed therapist through BetterHelp can help make all the difference. You get real, personalized guidance instead of just guessing based on something you saw on social media. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, serving more than 5 million people. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. My annoyance with this broadcast is I didn't need the national pandering for the stadium in Arlington Heights. I was like, are we really doing this? And then they showed the Bills' new stadium, and I'm like, this is so coordinated between these two franchises to show, like, here's an empty plot of land, and then here is what a new stadium on it is going to look like. I could have done without that. That's my number one annoyance from this game, Lauren.
So if I can try and spin that for you,
Okay.
it at least shows that Kevin Warren and company are good at this, in the sense of like they found a way to get that on the air. That they got some free publicity to, like, at least as much as we don't like, it's kind of annoying. Like, at least the fact that they were able to do it suggests some skill and ability to maybe actually get this out in front of some people and maybe make some real progress on it.
Yeah. So let's talk about the actual bad things. I think it's all injury, honestly. Terrell Smith getting hurt is the first one. I mean, you've got a position in which Jalen Johnson looks like he goes through a full pregame workout routine before he's out on the field. That's very positive in terms of being ready for week one. We're not sure exactly when he's going to be out there, but no Kyler Gordon. And then now this injury adds into it, and you're just like, it's really the one position where I felt like that's where you couldn't afford another injury, and now the Bears have to face that.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel bad for Terrell Smith too, because he got injured in the last preseason game too, and then came back, and it's like, all right, no, he's good to go, and now he's really not. I mean, I don't want to jump to too many conclusions, but like that looked like a season-ending type of injury in all likelihood. There, we'll see if maybe he gets better news than that. But yeah, I think it's going to make it tricky when it comes to like 53-man roster cutdown day, because I mean, maybe Jalen Johnson's good to go for week one, but if Kyler Gordon's not, is there a possibility where they want to put somebody on a short-term IR? But you can't do that until you get past the 53-man roster cutdown day. So you keep you keep one fewer player somewhere else to keep your injured player on the 53. Then the next day, put them on IR and then bring somebody else back. Like, I just wonder if they're going to end up having to keep, maybe a seventh cornerback instead of a ninth offensive lineman or a ninth defensive lineman or a sixth wide receiver, or whatever it might be. I just the more of these injuries that kind of linger into the regular season that don't automatically go on season-ending injured reserve, the more trouble that becomes. But I do think at least like the Stevenson Nashawn Wright battle helps you feel like you're not going to be putting nobodies out there at cornerback. But you do wonder, like, Nick McLeod was playing slot in this game because Josh Blackwell wasn't out there. Like, it becomes everybody you lose, you feel like, all right, now I'm a little bit more shaky when it comes to be like, who's covering Justin Jefferson in week one? I'm not sure how that's going to work.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's like, even like if you have friends that are fans, but maybe they're not as, diehard as others, and they start going, who's this guy? And you're like, I don't have the best answer for you. That's when it gets in scary territory for like and that's where it feels like the Bears kind of are at with corner. The running back room gets hit a little bit as well in this one. Was it Hakins has a couple like solid, 3-4 yard runs, looks okay back there, but he leaves the game. You obviously got Roschon Johnson, who's hurt right now. They didn't want to play DeAndre Swift. I think it's the same for Homer, but just the running back room also taking a hit in this one. So also adds to another part where you might be looking at, as guys get cut, where the Bears might want to add.
Yeah, it's weird when you don't have any of your top 4 running backs, and then the guy you start this game also leaves with an injury, so you're down 5 running backs, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, this feels like it started to be a little bit of a concern. They're not so much like for the regular season per se, but I can't help but think back to, I think it was just last week when they worked out Jamal Williams, the former Lions and Saints running back, didn't sign him. They signed this Britton Brown guy instead. But like, if Hankins' injury is going to be anything more than really minor, or if Monangai isn't able to go for the next preseason game, maybe they just want one more body in there who can show up and already knows the offensive system, knows the coach, knows most of the coaching staff, knows Dennis Allen and Ben Johnson. Like, it would make a lot of sense that if Jamal Williams is interested and is cheap, that he would kind of be the next man up just to give another camp body in there, even if he maybe doesn't make the actual 53-man roster. Just rotate somebody in and see what you can do.
It's hard not to think back to Hard Knocks last year and how preseason went with the injury to Ian Wheeler, and then 19 carries, 80 yards in this game. Maybe there's space for him just on the roster this season. I don't think so, but if these injuries are worrisome at all, maybe there's something there, because Ryan Poles clearly likes him. I
was concerned because he's the only one of these guys that was here last year. I mean, not that that matters a lot, but like, he was the last running back on the depth chart. Their top 5 guys are down. Like, the undrafted rookie starts this game, which I thought was weird. And then when he gets injured, the guy that they just signed last week gets in the game before Ian Wheeler. Like, yeah. I think Wheeler ran the best of the group, but like, it just doesn't feel like they're featuring him in the way that you might expect. Like, as much as they seem to like him and bring him around, and we've been impressed by him, I would have thought he would start this game and be their go-to back. Instead, it takes an injuries in the second half before he really gets the opportunity to show what he can do again. And then lo and behold, runs well. But it feels to me like that bottom of that group is just all guys fighting for maybe a practice squad spot between the 3 of them. And I like Wheeler's chances there.
Anything stand out? I don't think there's any red flags, but what stood out in this game in a negative for you?
I thought the pass rush wasn't much, especially as we got later in the second half, especially like Trubisky had a lot of clean pockets to throw from. And obviously it didn't result in touchdowns or points really at all for the Bills. But like, to me, they weren't getting after the quarterback nearly as much as I would have liked. We got the Booker sack and the Billing sack early on, but maybe we got spoiled by the Dolphins game a little bit because Dolphins offensive line is not very good. And some of those guys were playing out of their minds, but I still want to build even more confidence in this pass rush besides just some Austin Booker flashes here and there. I didn't get a ton of that. And then I didn't think they were giving the running backs a ton in the ground game, especially on the goal line. It was like, took 4 downs to get Ian Wheeler in there a couple times. And I know Wheeler's not necessarily the most, big bodied bruising back in the world, but he's not light. He's just kind of short and stout, short and kind of, compact there. So I didn't think the run blocking was amazing, and especially some of the right side of that offensive line when you got the backups in there. Just not a group that was like super impressing me, but none of these are like catastrophic. Sound the alarm, something's wrong with the Bears.
Yeah, and the start of the second half was also kind of the opposite. The start of the first half, I think it was like 2 or 3 penalties in a row. So the operation of the offensive line and everything was a little clunky out there in that second group. Tyson looked like he had pretty good protection, but I think the pass rush is a good one to point out, because it's the one area where, of all the guys we're seeing in preseason, I feel like they can get the most amount of legit playing time in a game versus the Vikings or whoever, because rotation is going to be heavy. We've seen Dennis Allen rotate guys in and out in the past with the Saints, and so now with Dominique Robinson, I think he got hurt too in this game, and Null says that here in the chat. I think he got banged up a little bit, him and Booker. So to not see still any real pass rush is really, it's not great. And you mentioned Pickens earlier. I think he was the 5th defensive tackle in. Feels like he might not be for this roster, honestly.
Yeah, I've been coming around on that more and more. I've tried to preach as much patience with Pickens as possible, because defensive tackle especially is a position that just takes longer than other spots for guys to adapt to the NFL. And a lot of even the really good defensive tackles take 2 or 3, sometimes even 4 seasons before they really hit their peak in their prime and break out in that way. So like, I still think there's something in Pickens that you can untap in there. But at some point, when you sign Grady Jarrett and you drafted Javon Dexter out of him, you drafted Shamar Turner in the second round, and you traded for Chris Williams. Like, at some point, everything you've done to try and upgrade the position, you just got to keep the best players, regardless of whether they were a 3rd round pick or you traded a draft pick for him last year. And he might just end up kind of being the odd man out. You'd love to be able to, could you trade him for a late round pick and get something for him? But I don't think he's even shown you enough of that for a team to say, yeah, we'll give you a 7th round pick for Zach Pickens. He just, in both preseason games, I don't think he's been bad. He just kind of seems like just a guy. He kind of disappears. You see, 96 was kind of near the ball that play, but it wasn't like, well, that 3rd round pick is dominating these backups. It's like, no, he's just kind of a 2nd or 3rd string defensive tackle in a preseason game, and that's not where he needs to be.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. It's without really like looking at snap counts and even trying to. It's in preseason. I always try to keep more of an eye on who's on. I always keep the roster up because there's so many guys with numbers I don't recognize. And finally, when I realized he was out there, I was like, how much has he played in this game? It's not a lot, and feels like he's one of those, misses for Poles. And Poles has been good in the draft, but it doesn't feel like there is much outside of that. I did feel like in terms of the secondary, there was open guys that whoever the Bills' first quarterback was, I didn't realize Mitch Trubisky wasn't even the second guy for the Bills going into this game. There were open players for the Bills. And to what we were talking about with the cornerback room health, there was clearly like, okay, if Josh Allen's out there, it's a different ball game right now with how it looks. So that was the other bad for me, is that there was plays there to be made, and the Bears got lucky a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I will say the starting secondary was not in there very long, despite N'Shawn Wright and Tyreek Stevenson battling. I think they're down. I think they're up for 3 plays is what the whole start is. Like Kevin Byard, Montez Sweat, Stevenson, Wright, Brisker, like those guys all played exactly 3 plays on defense. So pretty quickly it was Trey Flowers at corner, and then I think the other top corner off the bench, well, Terrell Smith for those few plays until he got hurt, and then it was undrafted rookie free agent Jeremiah Walker is his name, and he played a ton. So like, yeah, agreed, but also like these are in theory players that maybe one of them will make the 53 depending on injuries, but if healthy, none of those players should be on the 53-man roster this year.
Yeah, it's a funny one for the defense. And really just for the Bears, like to see a 38-0 blowout in a preseason game. Even I'm just like, what do you learn from this game? Because like I saw someone tweet out like it looks like the Bills don't even want to be here. And to be honest, I kind of felt that way too. Like I was like, I don't think the Bills want to be at this game whatsoever.
Were you surprised though that the defense only did get the one drive and it was essentially a 3-and-out, because it had the 2 false starts on it, so like that was a little bit longer, but like offense gets 2 full, I don't want to say long drives. The second one wasn't that long, but it was still 5 or 6 plays, and the defense gets, there was a handoff to Davis, a short pass to Palmer, and then after the false starts on 3rd and 19, it was an incomplete pass, then a punt, and they're like, all right, good enough, and yet the offense needed 2 of those. I don't know, I don't want to read too much into that, but what did you think about that decision?
Yeah, I guess I think I almost look at it in 2 ways potentially. There's the way of they've seen enough in inner squad where like they know they're good to go. Potentially the offense has been a little bit behind, so I guess it's really just that. My guess is they must think the defense is just ready, and maybe Dennis Allen just views it differently and he had his way. But I was shocked because when Caleb went back out there for the second drive and then none of the starters on defense went back out there, I was very confused. Because I just assumed they were all going out there too. If the offense got 2, I assumed the defense would get 2.
Yeah, I would have thought like, yeah, of course, maybe you don't send Montez Sweat back out there or Kevin Byard, but like with Tyreek Stevenson and N'Shawn Wright like actively competing for one spot when Jalen Johnson's healthy, I would have thought that maybe you take out all the starters except them, and maybe you leave in, a couple of defensive linemen if you wanted to see more from, Jaron Dexter or whoever on the interior. But like, I get taken out Tremaine Edmonds and like the established veteran guys that you just know like they don't need any more snaps than that. That's fine. But like Stevenson and Wright in particular were the 2 that I'm like, don't you want to leave them in like just a little bit longer to see how that goes? I mean, they certainly know better than we do here. But for as much as I talk about that being wide open, it felt a little bit more like, no, we're good with those guys. That's fine. You'd rather see Terrell Smith, and kind of got cut short on that one.
Yeah, my concern with them not being out there is that they don't think they need to see them in a cornerback battle anymore, because even though Jalen Johnson warmed up before the game, maybe they're not being totally upfront. And I know we talked about this on Tuesday about potentially that, maybe like the comments that are being made don't really indicate that Jalen Johnson is going to be ready for week 1. It could be week 2 or 3 before we see him out there. That was kind of my other thought too, was just like, maybe week 1's really the final box check in the cornerback competition for whoever does the best against Justin Jefferson to be the other guy opposite, Jalen Johnson.
And that spot to me feels a little bit like left tackle, where like if I had to bet on it now, the incumbent's probably going to be it's probably going to be Tyree Stevens. Like if they're close enough, they're probably going to go with the second round pick as opposed to the free agent on a veteran minimum contract. Like who's going to, if it's a coin toss, they're probably going to the guy they invested a lot more draft capital in. But if there's some kind of real separation there, I just imagine they probably know that Stevenson's a little bit better, but they also probably know that Jalen Johnson might not be ready. So no need to prolong that and kind of keep. Well, you're not going to declare it over, but you also don't need to keep everybody out there for super long.
Obviously, as we're doing this live, press conferences are kind of happening. So Ben Johnson, when meeting with the media, was asked about starters playing in Friday's preseason finale. He said, "We'll talk about it as a staff. I know we're going to have a good padded practice on Wednesday." So
that means no.
That means no. That means no.
Playing. I mean, because remember when he announced the starters were going to play this week, he was like, it almost in passing, it's like, oh yeah, and I'll just officially say it now, they're going to play. Like I don't think they're going to play. This sounds a lot more like what they talked about in the lead up to the first preseason game, where he doesn't rule it out, but all he's saying is like, unless they really stink it up at the joint practices, the starters are not going to play. Like it's 99%, but we just got to see it for sure before I'm officially going to commit to it. Because never say never. If these guys really have poor effort, then we're going to punish them by making them play, but they should be fine.
Yeah. All right, we'll take our last break here for YouTube. It'll be like 5 seconds. But when we get back, just what's left to learn, what's left to see from the Bears in next week's game and in the coming weeks of practice before week 1, because it's right around the corner. That's next year on the Bears Squad Show on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel. All right, so what's left for you? What questions do you have about the Bears now that we're 2 preseason games in? We've seen the starters. One preseason game left where we just said doesn't sound like you're going to see the starters in that game. And the first, Monday night game is now right around the corner.
Yeah, I think for me, it's some of these like last few little roster spot battles. Like how many offensive linemen are they going to keep? And what do they do with Karana Magaji and Theo Benedette? Like how they parse out which guys they keep and don't keep. Because I think my hot take right now is that Theo Benedette's not going to make this 53-man roster. Like he's getting first team practice reps at left tackle. And I think he's going to be on the practice squad this season. Cause I just think you got Braxton Jones, Darnell Wright, Ozzie Trapillo, 1, 2, 3 for sure. And then I don't think they're going to cut Karana Magaji in year 2. That would be way too early. So he's got to make the team. And then Ryan Bates is going to be one of your top interior backups. And like Luke Newman, your 6th-round pick, started this game at left guard for Joe Thuney. So like those are 9 guys right there that you'd probably want to keep. Plus then Benedict would be 10. Like they're not going to keep 10. Like they might not even keep 9. I think they could still put Luke Newman on the practice squad. And so like those kind of dynamics where it's not even necessarily like one guy versus another guy, but it's like, do they keep 9 offensive linemen versus that 9th defensive lineman versus that like 6th linebacker versus that 7th cornerback, where it's like guys competing across positions where it's not even a head-to-head thing. It's purely like who do we feel like we just can't let go of? And it's not so much like a reflection of who's the better player, but it's just like, well, who could we stash on the practice squad and who do we think we can't get away with trying to push down?
Yeah, I think to expand on that too, how many receivers are you keeping? Just with Ben Johnson and all these different things he can do on offense, like when you have a guy like Duvernay, who really is going to be a return specialist on this roster, like, are you going to go 7 deep? I don't think so. That feels like a 6-man, group of guys, just in terms of how many of that position group. The wide receiver, the cornerback room, like you said, we talked about earlier, that feels like a total toss-up at this point, because if you like someone, you don't want to leave them open to the rest of the NFL when that one cut day happens, if you're worried about a couple of injuries. So they're going to have a lot of questions of where it's going to be. The other one for me is Ozzie going to play right tackle again next week? Like is that going to be, or is that transition kind of happening right before us, that between, Theo Benedict and Kieran, are those your backup left tackles, even if one's on a practice squad? And is Ozzie Trapillo, is he a right tackle all of a sudden?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to keep tabs on here, because in theory you want one to just be the swing tackle, and you only keep one backup tackle and then a backup guard center, and you can take other bodies at other positions a little bit more deep in there. I want to see Amagashi play some guard too. Like I'd move these guys around. If we're all pretty sure Braxton Jones is going to be the week 1 starting left tackle, then like move everybody else around as much as you can and get them used to multiple different positions there. I think Luke Newman could play center and give you some versatility there too. I was just looking back at some Lions 53-man rosters, and there were a couple seasons where they just kept 5 wide receivers all year. They didn't even go through 6. I think last year they kept 6. So it'll obviously, different roster, different team, different situation. But I'm curious about the tight end position too. Like if Coleston Loveland and Cole Kmet are going to play a lot, do you need to keep 4? Like just to have extra bodies there? Because none of the backup tight ends have looked worth a roster spot. I mean, Durham Smythe looks bad. Stephen Carlson's not very good. Joel Wilson made a couple of catches, but I don't think he looks like a regular season, like NFL contributing tight end to me necessarily. I mean, a couple of nice catches, but third stringers against the Bills. Like to me, I don't feel like there's barely 3 guys worth keeping there, and I can see them wanting to keep a 4th, but I don't think that 4th one, if they do, is currently on the team. And then same thing at running back. Like Ben kept 4 a lot in Detroit, but if Roshan Johnson's hurt, does that make you keep a 5th for a little while? Or if he's ready to go, like it's going to be really difficult to predict this year's 53, because we just don't have a lot of historical trends to be able to point to Ben Johnson with the Bears team and how he's done it with this kind of roster.
5 running backs sounds like a lot, Lauren. Like that's a big commitment. I think it's a good point about tight end. Like that third one to me is who blocks the best. Like who is basically your 6th offensive lineman on goal line. I don't think I agree with you. I don't think there is another pass catcher or anything like that from the tight end room at this point. That could be one where I think in terms of when roster cuts happen, that we could see the Bears attack in waiver claims and go after a tight end.
And I don't mean keep 5 healthy running backs, but I mean like
no, yeah.
The initial 53, you keep 5 so that the next day you put Roshan on injured reserve. So then you have 4 healthy running backs but you have to keep 5 on the initial 53-man roster, but it's not actually the team you take to week 1. Like that's going to be the messy part there. And then we talked a little bit about defensive line being messy. Like does Zach Pickens get cut? Does Dominic Robinson get cut? Do they bring in other bodies there? Like it feels like the back 7, we could, outside of the cornerback injury situation, like we kind of know the 4 safeties they're going to keep. We know the 5 linebackers they're going to keep. And then it's just better if the cornerbacks are healthy. I think we kind of know the 6 guys that are there, but it's really up in the trenches. And then some of the skill position guys that it's like really wide open. And maybe we throw Case Keenum in that conversation too. Like he doesn't play at all in this preseason game. Like, does that mean he's totally safe, or does that mean he's totally gone? I don't know what to expect. Do they keep 3 quarterbacks or do they keep 2? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, again, so last year he was hurt, and the Texans just gave him a paycheck for a season, put him on the injured reserve before the season started. So you could do something like that. I feel like that's what you want out of him. It does feel weird to keep 3 quarterbacks, honestly, with the way that Tyson played in the preseason. There were positive reports out of him at camp. It doesn't feel necessary to keep a 3rd quarterback in this room unless they're essentially just a coach.
Yeah, and so like, could you get away with like a 3rd quarterback practice squad thing, or injured reserve? Like, do you sort of make up an injury and so then he's still around, but you don't have to take a 53-man roster spot? Like, it does feel like, I don't know, like the whole reason you brought in Case Keenum was to have him be there to be a voice, but is that worth an actual roster spot when you've got it? Like, is it because it comes down to like, do you keep Case Keenum or Theo Benedette? Do you keep Case Keenum or Zach Pickens? Do you keep Case Keenum or Dominic Robinson? Like, who helps the team win more this season? A 3rd quarterback or another pass rusher that can get in the game, or another receiver who can catch passes, or another running back? Like, Caleb Williams' development should probably be the number 1 priority there. So if you think Case Keenum helps, I think that's going to be the most valuable in the long term. But I don't envy their job to try and figure out how you even stack those positions against each other.
Yeah, it's going to be it'll be interesting just to see, because Ben Johnson, what you mentioned earlier, like what does he envision his roster to look like, but also the injuries, because they seem to what's tough for the Bears right now, I think, going into these last couple of weeks of the offseason, is that they have piled on, as we've talked about here on the show, in certain groups more than others. It's running back room, cornerbacks, pass rushers now. They've piled on in one area. In a weird way, you'd almost, I think, would want it to be a little more spread out, but it's just going to make some weird roster crunch decisions, and even like Noah Sewell, he didn't pop on in this game like he did in week 1. I felt like I just remember Hippolyte more as like we're thinking about it and during the game in this one. So, and those guys will both be on this roster, I would imagine. But besides roster crunch, like I think we know who the left tackle is. I think both corners are going to be out there in some capacity, whether Jalen Johnson is or not. I think the Bears roster at the top is pretty locked in at this point. I don't really foresee, I was trying to think of like what could be a surprise, and I can't really think of anything that like would shock me at this point. Maybe Jonathan Owens, like I don't know, like I don't even then, like that sounds bizarre to say. So I think it's pretty easy to call the Bears roster, at least the first chunk of it going into the season.
Yeah, outside of a trade, like that's the only thing. I mean, I know now Brian Robinson Jr. might be available, and everyone's been throwing out the running back thing for a while, and like the injury at least makes that a bigger possibility than it would be before. But I do think if the Bears were going to trade for a starting caliber running back, they would have done it long ago than now. They're not going to go out and make a big running back splash. If anything, it's Jamal Williams, veteran free agent, veteran minimum, end of the depth chart guy, not top of the depth chart. Surprise, big splash.
I will say, I don't think Brian Robinson would intrigue me, depending on whatever's going on with Roshan and depending on what they think of him. And Monungai, I think Ryan Poles gave a pretty positive report there. He made it sound like it was more like, hey, it's preseason, he's not going to play.
Yeah.
But so overall, I think the running back room will be fine. But you're right, unless there's a big trade, I think this roster is pretty locked in at this point. And now I just can't wait to get to week 1.
I really like as we're sort of doing this live, I saw that Ben Johnson said that Declan Doyle called plays in the second half and Al Harris called plays in the second half. So they handed over the headset to the assistants. And I'd like to see more of that in the third preseason game. And I'm surprised more coaches don't do more of that in the preseason. Like I get like year 1, Ben Johnson, Dennis Allen in Chicago, like maybe just because they're getting used to the players too, that they want to handle more of that in the year. But I don't know why Andy Reid should ever call any plays in any preseason game. For any of those kind of coaches, those kind of staffs, like Steve Spagnuolo shouldn't call a single defensive play for the Chiefs. Why not give those coaches more experience? So I'm fully on board with both those guys getting more and more opportunities, and I'd let them do the whole third preseason game if none of the starters are going to be out there.
All I heard was Eric Bieniemy snubbed, not allowed to call plays during the preseason. But no, I think that's it. That's really interesting because we even see we see some coaches go up and down depending on where they're at. We know obviously Ben Johnson's going to be on the sideline, but we see in other situations where some coaches are up in the booth and the next preseason game they're on the sidelines. But yeah, I'm with you. Like I don't know, Ben Johnson doesn't need to call plays next week.
No, I mean
for whoever's the quarterback next week, it might not even be Tyson. Might not even play on Friday.
Yeah, like it was good for like Caleb Williams to hear Ben Johnson calling plays in a game at Soldier Field with a real opponent. Like, like there's a certain aspect of like that matters for them. But then at that point, like, yeah, let's have some fun with it. But it's probably for Eric Bieniemy is he's like 4th or 5th on that totem pole. Cause it's like Ben Johnson, Declan Doyle, then Press Taylor. And I mean, technically Antoine Randall is assistant head coach. So like he's also probably in the hierarchy in the corporate flow chart, slightly a notch above Eric Bieniemy. But like, man, what's a guy got to do to get some offensive coordinating opportunities around here, man? It's tough.
It is tough. All right. Well, we'll be back with you guys here on Tuesday at 4:00. We'll have another Bear Squad show, Lauren and I, and probably a guest. Just really a full season preview as we get closer and closer to week 1 of Bears Vikings. We'll also be with you here on Friday night, the third preseason game. We'll see who plays and what we can learn, but we'll get the final kind of news and notes of what the Bears are going to look like going into the start of the 2025 season on Tuesday and Friday. He's Lauren Cox. I'm Joe George. Check out Lauren Monday through Friday here on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel. If you're a Cubs fan, come on over. We do Cubs post-game shows as well on the Locked On Cubs YouTube channel. So thanks for watching. We'll talk to you on Tuesday. Peace.